Do you have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
Hi there, and welcome again. Another edition of Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. Good to have you along. John Scholl is your host right here, and joining me in moments, John Pincus, employment lawyer from EmploymentLawyer.ca. Got a lot to get through in the show today. I'll give you right off the top how you reach John and his team anytime. You're always encouraged to make that phone call, right? Have a conversation in private. Could be a simple matter, could be something that's bothering you in the workplace. Always reach out. 1-888-861-4555. Again, 1-888-861-4555. 4555. Email's working too. That is ask@employmentlawyer.ca. I'll give you a couple of other websites during the half hour you can use at your leisure as well. But a little later on the show, 5 fast facts about wrongful dismissal. That is the main topic we're going to get to. Maybe some phone calls from our long-running radio shows as well. I'll give you details how you can participate in that radio show throughout the week. They're hour-long. They go across the country, including News Talk 1010 right here in Toronto. But we always start off and get warmed up with the week that was. John, what do you got going on, pal?
Well, there's always lots going on because employment law is always changing. It's always evolving. And that's why it's so important to get advice. You know, a lot of people think employment law, like anything else, I'll just Google it. I'll look at it just like I would look up, well, hopefully you don't look up medical advice on Google, but a lot of people do that. A lot of people look up legal advice on Google. Technically not really a good idea in either sense because employment law is nuanced. Everything's fact-specific, things change, and if you go on Google, you're going to get a lot of information that doesn't apply to you, you're going to get a lot of misinformation, and you're going to get a lot of incomplete information. So it's really important that if you're faced with a situation in the workplace, that you get the proper guidance. Perfect example of this. Very recently, someone came to me. They've been working for a marketing consulting company as a manager of a team. They've been working there for about 15 years, and they'd had this role for quite some time. And they had the misfortune of being in charge of the team that was consulting with the technology industry, which has been hurting a little bit lately, right? So the company decided to do a little bit restructuring. So what they said is, all right, we're gonna change your role, and they moved her to another group that was focused on the food services industry, which was doing a little bit better. Problem? She lost her title, she lost her duties, she lost her direct reports. But her compensation stayed the same, even though her duties were eviscerated. So she came to me and she said, what can we do about this? And in fact, a demotion can be constructive dismissal even if there is no change to your compensation. Very important. So she had the option of taking this and treating it as a termination and pursuing her full severance. But it's very important that she did this with guidance, because if she had done it too early, it could have been premature and could have very much damaged her case. If she'd waited too late, then she could have been deemed to accept that change. And not only would that impact her ability to do something about it, it actually could impact her severance entitlements later down the road because she's no longer a manager. So it really is kind of a double whammy, if you will. And so it was so important that not only that she spoke with a lawyer, but that she did so right away without trying to research it on her own. So perfect example why always important to get legal advice when you're faced with a situation like that.
That website I wanted to mention is EmploymentLawyer.ca. Why go there? There's tons of information. Of course, you can reach out to John. The phone number again, 1-888-861-4555 and ask@EmploymentLawyer.ca. Also, there's a media tab right there. That's handy because once you open that, you'll have access to our TV shows, past and present, and radio shows as well. Radio shows, we actually go across the country. Lior, John, and I have been doing this for about 10 years. Everybody calls in this show. They have great questions. We play some of those back here and talk about them. Let's get to one of those phone calls right now, John, and discuss a little bit of it.
Brother was in an accident. He's had some time off, but the long-term disability program that he had with his benefits, it was covering him while they were there. They've cut him off, and now the company has offered him 7-week severance, and they said that they are not going to be hiring him back. He wanted to return to work. He kept telling them that. Is there anything that he can do? I believe he's 52 now. He works for a construction company, 4 to 5 years.
Well, here's the reality. You know, it sounds like in that situation that the employer is basically saying the employment relationship has become impossible. It's ended. It's become what they call frustrated. But a lot of employers wrongly assume that frustration of employment is linked to disability benefits. And those two things are not necessarily the same thing. Just because your entitlement to disability benefits ends doesn't mean that your ability to continue your employment ends. So in this situation, it could be not only a wrongful dismissal, but a human rights violation, because rather than the employer doing what they should have done, which is to look at the doctor's notes that they had actually received from the employee, they should have waited until they knew the employee couldn't return to work. They just made assumptions. And so this person is going to be entitled to their full severance. And let's take a look at the pocket employment lawyer and see what this person could be entitled to in the circumstances. So you look at that person, 52 years old. Of course, we're looking at the age, the position, and the length of employment. Construction supervisor, that's something that's going to increase the entitlement. And you see the compensation owed is significantly more than the 7 weeks that has been offered to that person. And this is exactly the kind of situation that's very straightforward to resolve with the help of an employment lawyer. And that's someone who should be speaking with an employment lawyer as soon as possible.
I want to mention as well, this particular caller you would have heard, they said they got cut off their disability. You can phone John and his team. The other half of the firm deals with disability law, and they can help you in that regard as well. So again, feel free to reach out. 5 fast facts about wrongful dismissal. That is coming up, but we'll take a quick break first. And as we get into that break, the phone number again, 1-888-861-4555 and ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca. Lots more Ask a Lawyer is on the way right here on CP24.
You have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
And welcome back to Ask a Lawyer here on CP24. John Scholes here, your host every week, and joining us again this week from EmploymentLawyer.ca, John Pincus, who's obviously an employment lawyer. Wrongful dismissal, that's the main topic. If you don't know what that means, you are going to be well educated over the next 5 minutes while we dip into this. 5 fast facts about wrongful dismissal right now. Number 1, John, is this: a wrongful dismissal does not occur because your employer fired you for the wrong reason. How about that?
That's right, John. Wrongful dismissal is not about an employer firing you for the wrong reason most of the time. Now, it can be. It can be. If it's a situation where, for example, your employer is firing you because you took a parental leave, because you took a medical leave, that can be the wrong reason. It can be the wrong reason if your employer has let you go because you have made a claim under Employment Standards Act. So it can be discriminatory, and that's the wrong reason. But most of the time, we're talking about an employee who has not received the proper severance package. And we're looking at your age, your position, your length of service, anything that could be an impediment to you replacing that job. And that can be as much as 24 months' pay. And that's why it's important to speak with an employment lawyer.
Fact number 2, wrongful dismissal. A termination for cause can still trigger a wrongful dismissal. How about that?
Right. Well, the question is, who is saying it's for cause, right? Is your employer saying it's for cause, or is the law saying that it's for cause? Because those are two very, very different things. And most of the time that an employer alleges just cause, and I find it's an employer who is mad at the employer who is not letting go the employee on amicable terms because they had some kind of disagreement with them. Maybe the employee was making a lot of noise in the workplace. Maybe the employee was getting into a lot of arguments. Maybe the employer was embarrassed that something the employee does. But a for-cause termination requires serious misconduct. And if it's not serious misconduct, you're going to be entitled not only to your severance, but your full severance, which can be as much as 24 months' pay.
We're talking about wrongful dismissal fast facts. We're going through 5 of them on the show today. Number 3 is a big change in your job can trigger a termination. Yes,
so keyword can. And this is why it's so important that you speak with an employment lawyer, because while there are things that can trigger a constructive dismissal, a forced transfer, so you're working one place and all of a sudden you have to work much further away, a change in your duties, a change in your pay, a change in your hours of work, and they're doing it without your consent, that can be a constructive dismissal. But whether it's a constructive dismissal and how you treat it as a constructive dismissal must be done with the help of an employment lawyer. This is a perfect example of something that you cannot and should not do on your own. And I've seen so many employees make that mistake. But If it is a constructive dismissal, you can treat it as a termination and get your full severance. So all the more important to talk to an employment lawyer and to talk to an employment lawyer as soon as possible.
Wrongful dismissal fast facts, number 4, and that would be you have 2 years to take action if you have been wrongfully dismissed. 2 years, how about that?
2 years, right. This is critical. So the most important thing for employees to know is you cannot sit on this, right? You cannot sit on this for more than 2 years because there are no second chances. If you miss that 2-year deadline, that is generally speaking, that is it. So you must do something. You must speak to an employment lawyer, not just before the 2-year mark is over, but well before the 2-year mark is over, because that is the time that you have to file a claim. At the same time, your employer who put that 1-week deadline on your termination letter, that is not the deadline. And so if you're going to be negotiating that severance package, that deadline's actually not going to mean anything because you're not going to be accepting that. You're going to be making a counteroffer, and probably that's going to come with its own deadline. So very important to know what is the deadline and what is not the deadline.
Our 5th and final fast fact for the show today in wrongful dismissal. This one by now you've probably figured out that an employment lawyer like John Pincus can help you with a wrongful dismissal.
Right. Very important. We can help. We're here to help. So you get that letter and you see that deadline coming. Maybe it is a generous severance package. Maybe you should be accepting it, and maybe you should be accepting it before that deadline. But if it is not an adequate severance package, then you should be speaking with an employment lawyer, and we can help you. We're here not just to advocate for you, not just to advise you, but to guide you through that process to make sure that it is as smooth as a process as possible. And the reality is, most employers are sensible enough, logical enough to know that it is going to be exorbitantly expensive for them to drag it out. And for that reason, employers, whether they like it or not, typically will resolve these matters early.
Again, that website we direct you to all the time, EmploymentLawyer.ca, among other things. Reaching out to John and the team, you'll have access to our radio shows on a station somewhere around Canada, really coast to coast, pretty much where you can find one, including News Talk 1010, Sundays, 1 p.m. I'm on there, Lior's on there. John takes a shot at it once in a while as well. Phone calls come in all the time from viewers and listeners like you asking questions, good questions. And we'll get to our second phone call from the radio show right now and talk about it.
I was working for a building supply company for 1 year and 3 months. I was a truck driver. I'm 40. Came back from a holiday and they said, sales are down. We're going to lay you off. We may or may not call you back. But after about 28 weeks, they said, we're not going to be calling you back. They gave me 2 weeks. And then I found out through a source, a friend of mine that still works there, that 2 weeks after they paid me out, they posted an ad for my job.
Right. So couple things here.
Yep.
First thing, an employer is allowed to rehire someone after they let you go. And in fact, an employer is allowed to lie to you about the reasons that they let you go. A lot of people, this is very counterintuitive. They give you one reason and then, they're hiring for my job. Yeah, that's pretty crummy to see that. And it's arguably not great practice for an employer to do that. They should be honest, but they don't have to be. The other thing is that if you've been temporarily laid off, you can generally treat that as a termination. You don't always have to wait until the employer decides that it becomes a termination. And if and when you treat it as a termination, you're not bound by the minimum entitlements. It doesn't matter if you're federally regulated, provincially regulated, you could be owed your full severance pay. In this case, this person sounds like they received only a fraction of those entitlements. And in certain cases, that entitlement can be as much as 24 months' pay.
We will take a short break. We're going to get into yet another phone call because we love them. We'll do that when we come back. But in the meantime, write this number down. Keep it. Reach out to John and his team anytime. 1-888-861-4555. Email as well. ask@employmentlawyer.ca. We continue. Ask a Lawyer. You're on CP24. Hang on.
Do you have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for hanging around here. Ask a Lawyer on CP24. John Scholes and John Pincus, employment lawyer from EmploymentLawyer.ca. Reach out, you can, anytime. Encouraged to, as a matter of fact. 1-888-861-4555. There's the phone number. Email there as well. ask@employmentlawyer.ca. And we did mention how many phone calls from our radio shows we love to play in this show. We'll get to phone call number 3 from our radio show right now. Hang on.
I was given notice on Wednesday, and the reason is restructuring, and I have 7 years of service there, clerical support type work, 57. The severance is 2 paid days for every year of service because I guess my company is under federal jurisdiction.
Right. So this is very important, John. This is the difference between full entitlements and minimum entitlements. Yep. And for that reason, it doesn't matter if you work for a federally regulated company or a provincially regulated company. Your entitlements are the same. We look at your age, your position, and your length of service. And it's not going to be limited to what is in the statute. So let's put up the Pocket Employment Lawyer and see what this person is entitled to compared to what they've been offered just under 3 weeks' pay. So they're 57 years old, they're a clerical position, they've been there for 7 years, they've been offered 3 weeks, and in fact, this person could be entitled to significantly more, potentially up to 6 months' pay. So you can see the importance of understanding that you don't need to understand what is in these statutes, in the federal statutes or the provincial statutes. What you need to know is that your entitlements are likely much greater than that. An employment lawyer can help you walk you through that. And if in fact you are owed, like most people, the full entitlement, it's going to be potentially tens of thousands of dollars.
And what we just showed you there, the severance calculator, can be found, by the way, at PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca. It's free, it's anonymous, takes about 30 seconds to go through it, and over 2 million of us in this country, 2 million, have used the severance calculator. Again, PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca. In radio shows, TV shows, being a lawyer, John Pincus does so much for the firm. He also does a lot of the live stream chats. You can find those on YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook as well. You want to take part at stlawyers.ca, at stlawyers.ca. Want to get a question from it, John, for today. It goes like this. I was fired for cause because of a Facebook post after a frustrating meeting with a plant manager and my foreman. Is that fair considering the comments were made outside the workplace? What do you think, pal?
Okay, well, let me preface this with sort of a public service message for people out there. Don't post things on Facebook about things that happen at work. It's never a good idea. Never a good idea. And in this day and age, your life does not, in the workplace, does not necessarily end when you leave the workplace. Now, that being said, can an employer fire you because you have made a comment on Facebook about a disagreement with your boss? Almost certainly not for cause. They can fire you, you can lose your job, but for cause without severance, most likely not. If you're in a position where that's going to impact the ability of you to do your job, it's going to impact the ability of you to work with your coworkers, it's going to negatively impact the company's reputation, maybe then it can be just cause. But the vast majority of the time, that is not going to be cause for termination. So while it is never a good idea to do that, and it is always a good idea, if nothing else, to take a look at your privacy settings on your social media. If you've already done it, if the damage is already done, and you've been fired for cause, you should know that very likely you are entitled to severance in that situation.
We'll take one more quick break here. Got time to grab an email on the other side. In the meantime, that number, I'll give it to you once again to call John and his team, 1-888-861-4555. Email is ask@employmentlawyer.ca, and we will continue after that short break here on Ask a Lawyer on CP24.
You have questions about your employment rights? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on CP24.
Welcome back to Ask a Lawyer. John Scholes here, along with employment lawyer John Pincus. This week, reaching out anytime, 1-888-861-4555. Ask@employmentlawyer.ca. That's the email address you can use anytime. John has a crew answering those as well. And we got time to get to an email right now, John. I will read this to you. You can answer. It says, I missed my sales goal by 2% despite my best effort during a tough year for my industry. Now I'm on a performance improvement plan. If I don't meet the targets within a month, I'll be fired. After years of hard work, I don't think this is right at all.
No, it's not right at all, particularly if your employer is intending to terminate your employment for cause. And this is the problem. And when they're putting you on a performance improvement plan, you should know that they are planning to potentially terminate you for cause. That's the reason it's there most of the time. Sometimes employers acting in good faith and trying to actually make some improvements, but most of the time, at least a part of the reason they're giving that to you is because they're trying to build a case. And the reality is, when it's a situation like this, your employment should not be like a game show, right? It shouldn't be like you're a contestant on the weakest link. But that is often how employers treat this, to get rid of people who are not meeting the sales figures that they would like to meet and to put maximum pressure on their employees. Now they can do that. They're allowed to do that. That's not illegal, and they're allowed to terminate the people who don't come up to the quota that they want to meet. But that's not going to be cause. That's not going to be cause for termination. So what do you do? What do you do if you're facing this situation? You haven't been fired yet. You've been given this performance improvement plan. Well, the first thing you want to do is respond, and you want to respond in writing. Now, maybe some of those criticisms are fair, and if they are fair, you want to acknowledge that they're fair, and you want to say, here's what I'm going to do to act on this. Here's what I'm going to do to improve this, and then you want to do that. You want to try and act on it. But to the extent it's not fair, to the extent there were external variables outside of your control that you could not do anything about, you want to also address that and say, this is unfair, and I'm not going to be able to do anything about that. So while they're putting you on notice, you're putting them on notice. And if your employment is terminated for cause, then you are very likely going to be owed your full severance. And that could be, as we know, up to 24 months pay, depending on the circumstances.
The key is here, as you said, always with anything, not just this case, but it's always in writing, right? Everything's got to be in writing.
Always in writing. And I say the gold standard is very simple. It's something we all have: email. Email's got a timestamp, it's got your name, it's got their name. If there's any response, you'll have that documented, and that becomes the evidence. That becomes the evidence that they need to overcome to establish just cause, because it's the employer who needs to establish just cause. And establishing just cause for performance, one of the most difficult things for an employer to do. So why make it easy on them? Make it as hard on them as possible.
And we are just about out of time for this week. Thank you so much for your contributions through email or otherwise. Want to let you know how you can reach out to John now that we're done. This show, always here, Ask a Lawyer. Simply go to cp24.com/askalawyer. That phone number, again, 1-888-861-4555. The email, which we just used, that is ask@employmentlawyer.ca. And of course, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Free, anonymous website, so important for gleaning knowledge about employment law, your employment and workplace rights, and free access to that severance pay calculator as well. We'll catch you next time on Ask a Lawyer. Thank you so much for watching here on CP24.